Hi, and welcome to this mini lecture on the 7 chakras of the human body and why much of what you might think you know about this is potentially incorrect. My name is Siam Pascal. I am the founder of the Light Collective, and if you're interested in yogic philosophy, practices around pranayama, mantra, kriya, movement, flow, feel free to subscribe to this channel below. This series of chakra lectures is one that I'm really passionate about because I only in the last couple of years realized that a lot of what I thought I knew about the chakras was actually incorrect. I definitely recommend you going back and listening to our first lecture in the series, which is on the short history of the chakras, if you're interested in it. But let's talk a little bit now about this idea that there are 7 chakras in the human body. This is a very popular idea. If you type into Pinterest the 7 chakras of the human body, or if you put it into Google, you'll see that there is this idea that there are just 7 chakras in the human body, or that these are the major ones, or this is the main system. So it will go that the root is called Muladhara, the sacral center Svadhisthana, the navel center Manipura, the heart center Anahata, the throat is Vishuddha, the third eye is Agya, and the crown center is called Sahasrara. Now, to flip this on its head, what I'd like to say is that in the ancient Tantric tradition, there were many systems of chakras. There wasn't just this idea of the 7, or sometimes as it's described, 6 in the body, Sahasrara, plus 1, the crown center sort of being a bit out of the body. In the ancient Tantric tradition, when we go back to the Tantras, which were the texts that were written between about 500 and 1200 ACE, what you'll find is different lineages have different numbers of chakras. So the first one that we can read about has 4. There are others that have 5, some that have 6, 9, there's a 16. There are systems that have different numbers of chakras, first of all. And on top of that, in the Tantric tradition, there were many names depending on the lineage and the practices. So the names that you might read about in Western books or find online or even hear about in your yoga teacher training, like the root chakra is called Muladhara. Well, in fact, across the traditions, the root chakra was called many things. It could have just been called Adhara. There were many names for all of the chakras in the different traditions. There were differing numbers of chakras across the traditions, and none of them were seen as being primarily correct or incorrect. It was that the chakras were mutable, meaning changeable, unfixed, and you would utilize a different system depending on your practice. So say that again. You would utilize a different system of the chakras. So maybe a 5, a 7, a 9, a 16. You would utilize it depending on the practice. So it was the kind of practice that you did that would influence how many chakras you were focusing on. Now, back in the day, if you were a tantrika, you were lucky enough to be born at that time and you had a tantric master and you were living in ancient India, it wouldn't be necessarily like it is today where you can get online or you can pick and choose your teacher. Usually you would just be moving into a lineage and your teacher would just be giving you your practice. And we work with 5 chakras. That would be it. It's not like you necessarily got to choose it. But the lineages were specifically working with practices, and those practices would be correlated to the number and the name of the chakras. So, for example, a 5 chakra system made a lot of sense to the lineages that were working with the 5 elements. 5 elements and balancing the 5 elements out within the body is part of many Indigenous cultures, religious traditions, and was certainly a huge part of the Tantric tradition. So working with earth, water, fire, wind, and space within the body made more sense to work with a 5 chakra system. Now, what's happened today is, because of the misinformation and because there is a sense that there are 7 chakras in the body, and this is the kind of set rule, there are 7 chakras, this is the name of them, this is what kind of Western or New Age ideas around the chakras say, they've kind of overlaid the 5 elements into the 7 chakra system, which doesn't necessarily work, because you've got the 5 elements to here, then what do you do for the other 2 chakras? So this is where you find there are innovations with the other chakras. And this is where the 7 chakra system doesn't make sense for every kind of practice. Now, some of the other practices that the ancient tantric lineages worked upon or worked with included working with the Sanskrit alphabet and chanting the phonemes of the Sanskrit alphabet through the petals of the lotuses of the chakras. And again, it only made sense with a certain system of chakras that matched the Sanskrit alphabet phonemes. Another way of kind of practicing within the tantric tradition was to work with specific deities, cause deities. So these are the cause of all things, cause deities. And with the cause deities, it might have made sense to work with a 7 chakra or a 9 chakra system as you slowly connected with each of the cause deities and allowed them to be kind of seeded into your body. Another way that they worked with deities was with the different consorts. And so with the consort pairs of deities, so the divine masculine and feminine, they would be kind of meditating in ecstatic, blissful love within each of the chakras. It made sense to work with, I think it was the 9 chakra system, but I'm not 100% sure, because there were 9 of these consort deities that the Tantrikas worked with. So basically, this lecture is to kind of start to free your mind from the sense that the chakras can only be seen as a 7 chakra system within the body. In fact, there were chakras that were placed across different places. So the palate, somewhere between the third eye, or between the eyebrows, somewhere behind the forehead. There were chakras like below the navel at the dantian or the khanda, and then there was the sacral chakra. There were different places for the chakras, but just on a side note, there was never a solar plexus. So between the navel and the heart, there was never this solar plexus spot as being a chakra. Across any of the 9 traditions, it was never utilized. So never in the tradition was there a solar plexus. This is a Hellenic or Greek term that has been brought in from the West. So if somebody starts talking about a chakra as being something that is located at the solar plexus, you'll know that there has been a heavy influence from the West, because it was never part of the tradition. If you are wanting to find out more, I'm afraid that there are very few texts that have already been published that draw accurately upon the tantric tradition. So it's going to be really hard for you to find this information unless you have connection to the Sanskrit scholars, which I'm very glad that I have as teachers. I don't personally speak Sanskrit, so I can't go to the texts. Or if you are a Sanskrit scholar and you have access to some of the kind of 7,000 or so available texts, not available to the public, but available through Harvard libraries and Kashmiri libraries, and through other Sanskrit scholars. You can go back and do the research yourself. So I'm afraid that I can't link you to any reputable books, and anything that you find online will probably clash a lot with what I say, because everyone is copying everyone else's misinformation around the chakras. But what I'm hoping is this series of lectures, we will kind of shatter some of the common misconceptions around the chakras and start to kind of spread a new idea about what the chakras are in a way that honors the ancient tantric lineage. Stay tuned for more lectures on the chakras, and I look forward to connecting with you again.